Well, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for our last session for today's program entitled Future of Tech Innovation in the Halal Sector? It is our pleasure to introduce our speakers for this session will be Professional Technologist Ming, CEO Digital Penang, and Professional Technologist Mahadhir Aziz, CEO MDEC. Amnah Shaari, Group CEO and Founder, Serunai Commerce and Berhad. And let's join me to welcome and hand over the program to our moderator, yang berbahagia, Datuk Dr. Hamzah Kassim, Co-Founder, IA Group and Chairman, Leong, Islamic Bank.
Assalamualaikum, thank you very much. I just to welcome all the panels, but before that, I think we're supposed to finish at 5:15, so we got 15 minutes more. But anyway, we have to extend the time for today. First of all, let me first introduce most of these speakers, panel members need no introduction. Mahadhir has been CEO of MDEC, and he has a lot of experience in digital transformation, have been involved in many of the initiatives in driving the digital economy, and been quite active before I know him personally, running large IT industry. And then I have Amnah, who's also been a familiar founder of Serunai, and one of these entrepreneur, very passionate in what she does. She has been in the MNCs and been involved in also a member of the International Chamber of Commerce and other association in pursuing her business interests. And I think 1 month ago, she was with me in the IDB on a panel discussion in Jeddah on digital economy. And then we have Mr. Ming, who is the CEO of Digital Penang. Also a lot of experience in technology, semiconductor, and also work in the industry, and hold some interesting position in MIMOS too, quite some time ago. And so what we'll do is I'll give you a few introduction, and then we'll talk a bit about innovation. So on the subject of innovation, innovation is not an easy subject. I mean, you are here in Penang and you arrive at the airport, you saw all this big semiconductor technology industry. So Penang has been a major recipient of the spin-off of innovation in the 70s on the semiconductor industry, and that's how innovation, the importance of innovation driving economic growth, created new jobs. But I have about we have not been able to innovate further than just doing simple assembly and some very little innovation in the semiconductor. I was meeting the Association of Semiconductor, and they were saying that for the last 50 years, Penang electronic semiconductor has been a major export for the government for the country, around 500 billion. And innovation is not only technology, business model, and also processes and other areas of driving new economic growth. So innovation is key to economic growth. But today, we are going through another wave of MDEC was set up, I think Dr. Mahadhir, to drive the information transformation was like, what, 30 years ago? And I was one of those that were earlier started the initiative of MDEC when I was in the government, and I'm quite happy that they have done quite a major transformation of the information industry. Now we're going to the third wave, which is the digital economy, which we see the development of AI blockchain, robotics, drones, and also gene editing, machine learning. This industry will grow around 2.5 trillion in 2025. So the acceleration of this digital economy is very fast. So it has impact on all sectors, including the halal sectors. And I think today we're going to focus about the halal sectors, how innovation is going to drive the expansion of halal sectors and lift many the communities we have seen. So a lot of my question will be looking at the future of innovation in the halal sector and how it would impact the growth of the enterprise, those in business of the halal economy. So my first question will go to Cik Mahadhir, MDEC, because they are responsible for the development of the digital economy. So there are 4 pillars in the digital economy or innovation of the halal sector, which is the fintech, the financial industry, banking, which I'm familiar. And we have the social finance, which is the zakat, wakaf, and then we have the halal food and also lifestyle that cover travel, cosmetic, pharmaceutical, and other products. So I would like to start with the financial industry. Islamic financial industry is the largest, among the largest in Malaysia, have a big contribution around 26% of the total Islamic finance. So from the perspective of digital, I would like to look at the Islamic fintech, which is not only the Islamic fintech is a growing sector. I want to ask him, what are the barriers, what are the challenges of scaling up Islamic fintech? We have also the digital bank, which the 5 digital bank license which the government has given, which is also a catalyst of the Islamic finance in terms of digital Islamic finance. So I just asked Mahadhir what he see the future vision of where Islamic fintech, Islamic digital banks, and what are the challenges, and how this is contributed to the growth of the other related sectors, because finance is so key to driving the other sectors.
Okay, thank you very much, Datuk, in terms of the questions. I think trying to look at how the growth of Islamic fintech, and I believe you have also shared I think some of the figures, the rate of growth for fintech in general and especially for Islamic world. Trying to put this into context as we wind down the day again. Population of the Muslim world today exceeds 2 billion people, and this makes up roughly about 25% of the world's population. Looking at that, for OIC countries, the aggregated GDP is about 30 trillion US dollars. So when we look at something like this, and that makes up more than 20% of global GDP as well, when we look at this thing, the future that holds for fintech and especially Islamic fintech is just tremendous. It's all available out there. I just came, I think last month, I believe, from the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, again discussing on how Islamic finance and Islamic world in general can actually address 3 major concerns that globally has become a challenge. 1 is very much on climate change, 2 on food insecurity, and 3 on public health as well. So when we look at this, how and the model of Islamic finance can actually do that and address some of these things, not to mention the major OIC countries like UAE and also Qatar can help provide some sort of funding for the rest of the globe and not limited to just the Muslim world. We can look at the advent of technologies such as blockchain to track and trace basically the kind of finance where we raise, where we distribute, how people actually contribute and impacted by that. Second part, the artificial intelligence in terms of identifying the kind of impact that we can make based on the data and suggesting where we can make new interventions or how we can change and modify those kind of interventions. So I think I'll start with that. The future is just tremendous. I think the opportunities for companies partaking in Islamic finance, financial services, banking, insurance, and digital economy as a whole, which happens to be one of the main promoted sector that we have under MDEC and under Malaysia Digital as an initiative, becomes something that we want to be able to open up and allow more companies to grow. I'll go into the interventions that we will do, but maybe we can get other inputs as well.
Yeah, but just to give a heads up, I want to follow up on the digital bank, the new digital bank, focusing on the underserved. Because I think what the government is interested is how does Islamic digital economy lift up the community to a different level. So the fact that the new digital is on underserved, I want to ask you what you feel about that strategy by the government. Maybe you want to answer now or you want to wait later?
We can always go back.
Okay, all right. Okay, I go to Amnah. She's always very excited to talk about Serunai. And you know, Amnah, you have been trying to drive Serunai as a Islamic digital tracking system across the region, actually. A pioneer, real innovators in terms of pushing this. You face many challenges in driving this, you know. What do you think, one or two, three things that you need, that the government or the stakeholders or the participant that need to do the right thing to facilitate the growth of your business in terms of adoption and acceptance of this Serunai blockchain-driven tracking system?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. Okay, first of all, I think everybody have to embrace digital now. We have story, you know, if you don't, then you really be left behind. So in the world today you ask me about my challenges. The problem is that I give my system to over 400 halal certification bodies around the world. 90% of them are still doing it manually. All right, so this is a real challenge because even, I must say, certain government, even our government, still using it manually, although they said it's E, but it's not really an E. You still have to submit things manually. So the challenge, not only they don't have a basic computer, they don't have a basic spreadsheet, they don't have an IT division. I think the mindset has to completely change because without that, then how are you going to put even a basic system into the organization? So our system, although it is an enterprise system, especially to government, we give it pretty much complementary, and especially government organization. But if they are not ready and they don't have the basic capacity, and that will be a serious problem. I'm sorry to say that, yeah? That's my answer.
Very short. Normally you have a longer answer.
Yes, naturally, the government at the top has to really become the catalyst and really has to force it. I'm sorry to say that. But I cannot say that too hard, right? So every government say, oh, we want to be digitalized, we want to embrace digital, but how far they really go down the route, really go down the floor to really asking people to really adopt it, and how? It's easy to say, but during implementation, it's very difficult. So I've been asked to go to all OIC countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, of course, Uganda, Maldives, my team just came back. They don't have that system. They don't even have an IT guy that really able to do basic things. So those education need to be there. So conclusion, the top, the government has to be the catalyst, has to be doing it. And one thing I learned about Indonesia, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin, the President Jokowi have changed the law in 2019 to the parliament so that everybody must have halal by next 5 years.
Okay, so
That's what force people to pick up things quickly.
So you need an autocratic nation to drive like China, you know, the adoption of digital very fast. Sometimes a democratic country take too long and to get things done. So I wouldn't ask you to comment that because not safe for you. So I asked Ming to follow up this. You in Digital Penang, you know, you have worked in the semiconductor. You see the whole transformation of Penang in the semiconductor technology, the lesson we learned, you know, for the last 50 years. But today, I was told that we are exporting 500 billion of semiconductor. That I had a dialogue with some of the industry. They say in the next 7 years, we will jump to 1 trillion, which means the acceleration. What we waited for 50 years to arrive 500 billion will achieve double in 7 years or 8 years by 2020. So there's the acceleration of technology. So in what you see, the core technology, robotics, AI, artificial, intelligent robotics, beside that, machine learning, and also a drone. How this technology is going to be driving the Islamic economy? Which part of the sectors you're seeing, like Amnah is driving through blockchain? So what are the core technology that will drive, you know, the halal? FinTech is also, you know, in some core technologies. So how do we see our enterprise adopt all this technology in driving their transformation?
Thank you for the question, Datuk Hamzah. Thank you to PHI for inviting me here. So with regards to technology being driven for the next 5 years, the doubling of the semiconductor outputs that we have is due to the increased demand in the multiple sectors that use the chips. Like you rightly said, AI, generative AI on the, for example, GPU chips, to drones, you got the smaller controllers, microcontrollers and such. But to extend that to the halal industry, the enterprises, it all basically depends by the definition of how the enterprises see themselves going forward. Because technology is not going to be there to tell you that we will go A, B, C, direction A, B, C. It is the business that has to decide how they want to evolve, either with the tech or to revolutionize the way they do business using the tech, leading the tech. So if the business is ahead, they will revolutionize the technology. If the business is behind the technology curve, they will evolve with the technology. So those two things has to be defined by the people in the industry, right? And the regulators as well. It's not, you're not going to work in an island where tech and the business will define their own way. The regulators will come in. They always come in either on time or typically late in fashion, and to say, oh no, you can't do this, this is wrong, and so forth, right? So they come hand in hand. The business innovations and the regulation has to come hand in hand, especially if you want to lead. It's best that both regulators and business leaders, they define how they want to move forward. So I think, to be fair, I think for the past few years in the federal government, they initiated a few programs like the Sandbox program with Meranti, right? That was the first start, a good start, where you could have technologies being tested, being tried out, where the regulators are constantly monitoring trigger points, how it would influence future policy making. So things like that should be in place for different layers of tech that will help the industry move forward. And at least for the Malaysian side, we can keep in lockstep with the innovation itself.
Right. Yeah. So you find that I will ask this question. Thank you for the question. I want to extend that your question to this. You're saying that in some industry, which is like the banking industry, which is quite a fast adoption of digital because it's the regulated industry, and we have sandbox. The other industry are slow adoption because they don't have a regulator. To a certain extent, I can imply that. So I go back to Mahadhir to see that, do you think we should regulate other sectors that drive faster adoption as the way the banking is doing that, for example, recently when the government increased the tariff for electricity, people start to go to alternative energy, So MDEC is not a regulator, but your bosses are regulated to a certain extent. So how do you see that, the banking model, which is, regulate the sector and push, of course, to a certain extent, we still want the branch, because technically the bank can operate without a branch, except to convert the banks to branches to more other high value added activity. But as MDEC, do you see certain sectors of the economy, like say 4.0, has not been fully adopted? So in the halal economy, which Amnah is so struggling, should the government be regulating subsectors that drive faster adoption of digital?
Thank you, Datuk. I think circling back to the earlier question and also feeding off the answers, if we were to use the banking and financial services sector as being highly regulated, yet very acceptive to new digital solutions and all that, mainly because of the openness of the regulators themselves to adopt and adapt new technologies. On the flip side of that, we have another highly regulated sector in the form of healthcare, with, I believe, more than 20 regulators, devices, practice, and things like that. Yet, they are slow in accepting or adopting innovations. As a matter of fact, when I was in my previous organizations, we helped Ministry of Health, at least within the Malaysia context, to set up the online healthcare sandbox. Because they said, give us that, because then we want to manage it. So again, and this was also another feedback that I gave to the previous Bank Negara governor as well, that the regulatory sandbox that Bank Negara had was a bit inward looking. You're not looking at innovations, but rather compliance. How do we comply to existing regulations? So it's about extending and opening up. And this is where Bank Negara has made more progress than this. So, coming back to adoption programs, which is something that the government can intervene and has done so in some of the other agencies, including MDEC. So when we look at, and I choose one example of COVID, where basically before COVID, we were pushing and encouraging people to use digital tools, to go online, to do businesses online, and so on and so forth, but to somewhat, I think, modest success. However, COVID just basically blew everyone away, and then we accelerated the adoption and the transition and transformation of businesses from offline into offline that we have today far exceeded the numbers that we set back in 2021, the 2025 targets. Today we have 1.2 million, more than 1.2 million businesses online, and that is the ones tracked by MDEC programs alone. There are other programs being done by SME Corp and other agencies, and similar agencies, and I'm sure we are not tracking that just yet. So again, coming back to this, I think regulations shouldn't be the impediment and shouldn't also be the excuse for us not to be able to do this. It's the kind of interventions, and this is something that I see when we try to do something for so long and it hasn't worked, we have to relook at the mode of intervention, who we are doing it with or through, and again, maybe there's not enough incentives that we should go. So I will argue that highly regulated sector may not be necessary for us to do the digital adoption and accelerate that.
Okay, but had you know the healthcare was caught by surprise when they were not ready, and the bank were all ready. We were quite happy that all these makcik who come to ATM machine, they're not touched, they have to spray their finger, and and we operate very well. Whereas healthcare, they don't have even an EMR, and then can you imagine that sort of disaster to happen again? So when some people come in from Saudi, they laugh at our apps. you know, very basic, you know. In some countries, when you go to the doctor, you have immediately EMR. You don't have to do another. So I think healthcare has to, you know, look at this problem. But I go back to Amnah asking question about, not about regulation, about your favorite organization is JAKIM, you know, so, and, you know, JAKIM is not a regulator, but it's a certificate body, and we have certification across the world, different standards, you know. So how do you apply technology when you go have multiple standards, adaptation, and when you're rolling out your product across the different region, different countries, you find different standards, different certification. What is the challenge of innovation from that perspective?
Okay, thank you. Tough question, no. Actually, halal is a very unique proposition. Everybody must work together. Okay, for example, in Malaysia, yes, JAKIM, I highly respect them because they've been one of the first certification bodies in the world, and we are the largest halal standard in the world. We have 14 halal standards in the world. So, but then in Malaysia, it's not just JAKIM. We have more than 10 ministries working together. So, you've seen Bapak dari Indonesia just now. So he's saying that as halal in Indonesia will link to the port and things like that. So I give you the case of the meat scandal. So technically, the system from the port to every logistic and even the certification bodies and all the ministries, makis and everybody must work together, collaborate together in order to make sure the data flow and you catch the people that really are naughty. So without that collaboration, halal, for example, QSR has more than 2,000 ingredients from 200 countries. And halal is not forever, as you know. It every year, 2 year, 3 year, depending on the certification body. So your question is, what's the challenges? How they collaborate? It is tough. I must say it's very tough to do that. Yes, education, one. The enforcement one, but the key is collaboration as well. Because you mentioned fragmented world, even in the fragmented states, fragmented departments, fragmented ministries, it is not working. Just now I asked a very important question about the logistic. In ASEAN itself, do we have an integrated system where every port at least have a halal warehouse? I was about to say that, but cannot. So, technically, no, they're not working together. So I said, if we want to send our export halal to the world, how are we going to do it when everybody not talking to each other? Yes, data is there. Our friend here, a gentleman next to me said, you know, we can give it to people, can enforce, but it's up to the business. Okay, if business is adopting it, but the government and the ministry and the authority is not adopting it, that is also a problem. I'm sorry.
Sorry to provoke you, but I like to do that. So, but, you know, I just want to ask Ming the question of, you know, China has been able to innovate and create, you know, the technology fast in adoption. And if you look at one of the most successful is digital commerce. You see, Alibaba has lifted a whole population of Chinese SMEs, micro-enterprise, to be successful and be, you know, whenever you order from Lazada, you don't show the product come one small province in China. And I was in Saudi when we were talking Islamic Development Bank. One of the risks by the Indonesian central bank governor is that, you know, Islamic countries should be a producer and not consumer. We have been a consumer of goods from other part of the world, and we are not being producing and become the world. And that's aspiration this morning from Indonesia is to be a global exporter of, you know, halal products and services. For in Malaysia, you know, digital commerce play an important role. So when we want to lift up the SMEs and micro-enterprise to be a regional player, digital commerce is a very important. So how do you see we do better in this digital commerce in terms of acceleration, the ecosystem, the payment solution, and the certification? How do we build a more bringing Malaysia's companies into this platform? for the halal product and services.
That to bring more in, I think revert to what Encik Mahadhir mentioned, intervention. Definitely, we need intervention from the government. So within the context of Penang, we are doing that to bring more of the micro SMEs on board to a digital commerce platform. We are quite agnostic, so let them choose. So if you relate to the halal industries, cottage products and whatnot, it would be good if there's a defined platform in the industry that me as a state intervention or intervener to be able to utilize that as a platform. But more so, to bring people on board, certain things like subsidies regards to running the e-commerce, because they are basically built on a very dynamic scale, how much you sell per month and whatnot. That would be something that the intervention will include subsidies to reduce that initial cost. But then again, the government shouldn't be in the business to run a business. So it's more to pull them in. And if the industries do see value in that, my hope, sincere hope, is that they would extend some form of subsidies to the micro SMEs as well, not only from the federal government, which has done so for the connectivity part, right, for doing business. And then that would take on its own path. Because I do know for a fact that most of the packages sold through our telcos, they have the government subsidies. On top of that, they do have the 2-month quote-unquote collection given to their retail agents. That could be passed on straight to the retailers, to the micro SMEs, if it's dealt directly to them. So they do have modes and means for savings. Hopefully that will get them on board more. And to take them further out, programs of exports, which we just ran one, I think, a couple of months back here in Kapala Batas with MPC, how to get the micro SMEs, cottage industries, to export their stuff and market their stuff overseas, mainly to Indonesia and, of course, China themselves. So there are a lot of halal customers in China that they do buy from Malaysia, and it's a good platform for us to utilize that demand there to get our products out. And I think traceability is very important because I've spoken to a few of the quote-unquote importers from China. They are looking for ways and means to enforce the traceability from Malaysia, so it clears customs faster in Shanghai. Because if not, you'll be in quote-unquote quarantine for some time before they pass the import clearance in Shanghai. So those are things where technology can come in place to, and the information and the education for our retailers or micro SMEs, these are things that of value that we can share with them, that the interventions are putting in by the industry and by government to help them export to halal markets. And how do we enforce it? Through technology itself. That would help. So intervention would help.
Yeah, that's why asking Mahadhir to, how to scale up, how to get this, because this is very critical for our SMEs to be a global player in halal, and so maybe you want to add to this.
Just on that note, but I'd like to touch also on the word subsidies, and I'll get back to that. I think in terms of programs that we've been running, the adoption programs and interventions is basically one of the key mandates of MDEC itself. So we have done it for different businesses and also people related to a certain sector. So the numbers basically would tell you the kinds of business. I spoke about the online platforms, and today we have more than 12 or 15 local online marketplaces that is developed through some assistance or even little assistance from the government itself. Mainly because people are driven. That's where the traffic is, that's where commerce is, and commercial activities and economic activities are happening. So we have to be there. What they need right now is assistance in terms of scaling up. So we have to do a different kind of intervention to help them. At least at MDEC, what we have done so far is expose them to different markets where they can actually have presence and therefore have that for the online marketplaces. For distribution and the producers themselves, they don't have to be in those markets, but rather they are using the marketplaces to reach to their customers. That's number one. But again, in terms of subsidies, everyone is asking for it. And I think this is where we need to be stringent in terms and rigid in terms of who we help. We have spent a lot of money and a lot of government funds to help build companies, tech companies that produces all this tech solutions, online marketplaces and things like that. It is time to help them scale up and not sit into just creating and coming up with new ideas that has been done many, many times over. That's number one. Two, I think, and I'll go a bit more on this, the digitalization effort has to be concentrated as well. And this is where I'll be a bit selfish and say that we are the original one-stop center for anything digital or technology and ICT before this. I think Datuk Hamzah alluded to that as far as history of MDEC. But today we are so fragmented. SMEs are being done by multiple agencies. MSMEs by even smaller units within certain ministries. And then digitalization, this one does startup and that one does entrepreneurship and things like this. But everyone is going digital. Can we not have a concentration of funds and efforts through digitalization? And I'll go a bit further than that. When we want to focus on halal, same thing. We are fragmented as far as the effort. We have certification body, we have industry development agency and things like that. And yet the effort is not coherent and coordinated. Obviously, the funds are also distributed across the board. And this is where I think the value of having a well-coordinated agency leading the way in terms of catalyzing halal and growing this together with digital. So there's opportunities for us to actually do that. So you reduce, you don't just combine everything into one, but reduce the complexity and let the market, the people, the businesses to have one place for them to be able to grow, whether I'm selling or producing halal, products and services, and whether I'm going digital with those halal. And like it or not, today you are going digital most of the times anyway.
So I think we are back to governance issue, so the fragmentation, the overlapping of institutions, my favorite subject. So I mean, everybody is trying to resolve this, but the best thing when you don't have much money, you need to figure out how to consolidate and become more efficient. And because then I go to Amnah in the sense that, if you were to look at the industry, that you are working on what is your future vision, Amnah, in terms of how do you see, what did you like to see Serunai in 5 years from now? Is it a global player dominating the whole trace and track industry?
Oh, thank you. I'm talking about Serunai.
Yeah, you're talking about Serunai.
Alhamdulillah, yes. Alhamdulillah, under the Islamic Development Bank project for the OIC, we are now digitizing all the OIC countries and non-OIC countries, which are Muslim populated world countries, with our system. So in the future, I must praise Penang. So to digitize its halal now, inshallah, because eventually everything is traceable, which is now is needed in export, import. And Indonesia, if you want it halal in the future, also must be all digitized. So you have no choice but to embrace digital. So the question, of course, semua orang, everybody wants to be good, global, but I see myself another 5 to 10 years for the company to really, because we do verification, real data, big data, and eventually the OIC countries can trade within themselves digitally. So we still have a long way to go. I'm not talking about Serunai, but Serunai need the help of everybody to make sure that it is ready together. It is a real fermented world. It's not a joke. It is a reality that we have to face, because halal is about working together, traceability, verification, and so on and so forth. But halal is embraced, hey, this is, the MNCs is adopting it. China believe in it because it's not only hygienic and science-based. People who don't understand halal, it is science. It is science. Nothing to do with anything else. We are developing human capital in science tech, food tech. So auditors that understand science, HACCP, GMP, and so on and so forth. So conclusion, so I know you want to be fast. Yes, we want to go global. Everybody interact with each other. And I must congratulate, because I'm in Penang today, that you are the first to digitalize it and connect to all the OIC countries eventually. Thanks.
Yeah, Penang people are quite innovative, most of us. First, that's why I don't want to ask this question during lunch, because she will take an hour she got passionate, upset all our lunch. So, can I ask Ming this question of big data? Big data is, it's very important. This is what about the digital bank is what, you want to get the big data. You can predict the customer's behavior. You can figure out, even they don't have a balance sheet, you'll be able to predict whether he's going to be. So what is Penang doing on big data? Referring to, and then later on question, how do you see big data in the halal, in Penang?
Okay, so within context of Penang State, we are still working on the multiple data sources that we have to build our data lake. I can speak on behalf of Digital Penang. We are in our development stage of getting that data set up. So it's work in progress, so it's not going to stop. The challenges that we have relates mainly on, to a certain degree, the PDPA revision that hopefully will come out soon. Because, as you do know, PDPA excludes federal and state government and related agencies, right? But behold, the one that has the freshest data actually is the local authorities, which aren't excluded in the PDPA. So that has to be revised first so that we can get access to the fresh data, up-to-date data. So that is something that we are hoping, working with federal, to get that resolved. And but at the same time, we are also building our ingestion and reporting, and also dimensioning the data that we want to see as reports going out to other GLCs within the Penang State. So that's the state agenda. So from the halal industry perspective, I would think a registry would be a start, most probably working with PHI, because Penang does have a digital transformation master plan that we have. So DTMP, in short, Digital Penang is one leading it, but we are supporting many other facets in that master plan. So halal is led technically by PHI. We will support them through technology itself, but the business nuances of how they want to run it, PHI will lead the way in this case.
Okay, you are doing data lake, which is the federal government doing PADU, which is
yes,
another data lake.
Yes.
So how soon you can get collaboration on getting your data lake out?
I haven't put a timeline to mind yet.
Okay.
Because state elections coming.
Oh, state election. State election is good to have a data lake so you can predict the voters.
PDPA.
Okay, I know that. So we have. I want to get to ask a question on this underserved. How does digital, banks, Islamic, because all these are the 5 licenses are mostly also Islamic digital bank, isn't it? Or 3 Islamic. So how do you see the Islamic digital bank playing a role in really lifting up the communities? Because the banking is a very difficult sector. Sometimes some people feel that the banking sector has not really helped the halal economy to grow. I'm not sure this is a perception out there. Particularly Islamic finance, more to do in building up the Islamic economy. But I think with the digital bank, what do you see in terms of using, predictive analytics with no credit records, yeah. So I'm in the bank. I read a digital thing every night, stuff. So how do you see to advance the adoption of technology with the digital banks, which is to get customers more easy to access to loan, sort of thing? How do you see that?
I think, yes, the issuance of the digital bank license should help open up banks or different parts of the banking fraternity into those markets that has always been and traditionally underserved. One, primarily because of the lack of the physical infrastructure itself to actually access those banking facility. But two, it shouldn't be a digital version or an online version of conventional banks. And this is where I think the introduction of new kinds of innovative services that must be included as part of the digital banks. So you alluded also to alternative credit scoring, for example, to allow certain finance or financial products to be given and extended to the groups. And this is where the B40 groups, or at least the groups that we have and want to be able to address by this almost exclusively and primarily through the digital banks. So I think with more data that we get and we cross over with the SMEs and also the Jabatan Kebajikan and the local authorities as well, and this is where we know how do we get to those sites and do a proper outreach to people. I believe the central bank is also looking at financial inclusion pilot projects. Private banks, institutions as well are looking at this. But again, the issue about coordination, and this is where we need to be able to have a proper agency that is entrusted to do this. Leaving it up to, I think, the private sector alone without any push or interventions, it will be driven primarily on other aspects. Nothing less than actually profitability and how to actually turn that into products. I think it's fair for the private sector. That's one of the main things driving them. But again, the kinds of government interventions that we need to be able to look at. And this is, again, where I spoke about regulations and being adaptive regulations. We spoke about agile regulations, but we're not there yet. And second part, which is outside of this, which is under my ministry, is very much on broadband access and speed. You're going to the rural areas, you're trying to reach out the B40s or the rural areas and hardcore and underserved. Part of it is because they don't have connectivity. How can you enjoy a service when you don't have quality connections? And this is where I think we are testing. You can say it's 97%, 96%, or 5G coming with 60+% today, 80% by the end of the year. That has to make sense. So this is what we are looking at in terms of providing not only access, infrastructure, regulations, and things like that. The awareness will come in. Right now, we can go down and just sell this idea. Digital bank is here, digital products is here. Today, we have more than 70 companies providing Islamic financial services solutions. But nothing can be enjoyed if you don't have that. So again, I think Amnah mentioned about interventions coming from the top and things like that. There are parts of which, while we are doing what we have done so far, we are relooking in terms of what else can we do on the, and I'll touch a bit lah, kalau boleh extend sikit. Pasal tadi the halal ports you mentioned kan, the halal warehouse, sorry. At the regional level, MDEC through MITI are actually discussing about one aspect about creating an ASEAN level GDPR on digital economy. So there's policy on that data portability. There's also data sharing across countries, and we hope to be able to do this. The flip side, we can also work with OIC and do this if ASEAN is not accepting it. It's a bit tough lah, but yes.
Okay. I had a last discussion on metaverse. We're not going to discuss today. So let's ask open from the floor questions then to ask. Yes, please, Zarina.
Hi, this question is for all the panelists. My name is Zarina from Perdana Leadership Foundation. So my question is, for the future of tech innovations to be bright, presumably we need talent as well. So perhaps the panelists can comment on the state of talent at the national level from MDEC, at the state level from Mr. Kwang Ming, and from Puan Amnah at the company level, whether there's sufficient talent in the tech sector, and if there are gaps, and what's being done to address those. Thank you.
Okay, good question.
Okay, maybe I'll start. Well, with regards to talents, based on the numbers that we have produced, we would say we are decent enough with moderate success producing the kind of talents that the industry needs. However, we are also cognizant that we have to keep up with the times, rather, that there are new kinds of talents that is needed by the industries. And this is where we do our industry engagements. Datuk Hamzah touched a bit on metaverse, for example, again, something that we spoke about in a previous panel. And we don't have that kind of designers or programmers and coders that can actually develop metaverses or even cross over from games development and bringing in blockchain to do this. We don't have enough blockchain developers. We don't have enough AI scientists and data scientists today. Yes, we can say we've ticked the KPIs and say, oh, I produced 2,000 data scientists, data miners and things like this, but they must be given work. And this sets up very well to my argument at MDEC that while we are producing the supplies, we have to create the jobs locally. Otherwise, this is where you get the brain drain. They will go elsewhere because the jobs are outside of Malaysia. So, with that, we used under Malaysia Digital this pemangkin or catalytic projects across certain sectors where adoption is happening or adoption is about to happen, and we have an overflow and oversupply of talents to be put there, to be tested there rather than you import. We like the foreigners to come here. We are quite liberal in terms of jobs and all that. They can work. However, there must be a limit to that. So coming back to this, I think the workforce that we have today has to be forward-looking. We are responding. Okay, you need this many talent, and we go to MOHR and MOHE and all that. Let's produce this kind of talents. But yet, I'm still hearing from the industries, especially in Penang. I was here, I think, early last year. No, you're not producing enough people for us to actually recruit. Or the old engineers would have to be software engineers today. The software engineers of yesterday would have to be prompt engineers of tomorrow to work with AI. Are we building that now? So we need those kind of programs, and we hope, at least in our part, at federal level and through our agencies, to actually engage the industries and see what's coming and then plan for it.
Okay, so Encik Mahadhir actually answered my half of it, which is Penang is never enough of talent. So it's a conundrum that plagues the industry as a whole in Penang, right? You produce, you look at the demand side, you produce training programs to deliver based on the demand factor. You supply them 1-to-1 ratio. But however, there are certain companies that come on board that would just look for people who can solve problems, not really what they were trained for. And they would hire those people off to be retrained to solve their problems. So then now there's a deficit in terms of the supply to the 1-to-1 ratio that you originally planned for. So that's how the ball starts, it snowballs from there, whereby Penang is always short of talent. That's one part. This picking of talent typically is in the talent wars that we have amongst all the MNCs in Penang. So what the state, within Penang State, we're trying to do here and there, I'm sure you heard of, there are a lot of other GLCs in the Penang State government. We got the Penang Science Cluster, we got who's looking at STEM for the primary to secondary school to encourage that. We got Penang STEM Development, we got Tech Dome, all set up to build more interests in those areas. We are also, or at least for my team, I'm trying to start to get people on board through working with the Sunway Group, the 42 KL. We are having a 42 Penang very soon as well. Same time, we have innovators in Penang like Forward School, trying to get to supply software developers for the local demand. On the other side as well, I'm also looking into the possibility whereby, it might sound strange, getting on board to software development talent pool doesn't mean we have to train everyone to be software developers first. They could get on board as testers. Every youngster that we have in Malaysia, I think they have quite agile and nimble thumbs to point and click, right? So this is something that the catalyst for the discussion was the recent SPM results. Are there possible employment or redirection of employment for them to get onto the tech sector? Yeah, they could be starting off their careers as testers first, and they have to then interact with the developers. And if they do see any click in the work that developers do, they can get involved to learn programming for those platforms anyway, right? So it's a reverse into the sector as opposed to the typical career path, right? As a developer, then a tester, and so forth. So we are trying to solve this problem through many different ways. I think everyone knows it's a work in progress, so we won't know until we get somewhere with it, but we are trying. So, and you're right, we do take from abroad, we do take from other states, and we do lose to other states, especially KL and Singapore. So I think recently we had the Deputy Meaty Minister coming to Penang about, I think, 2 weeks back. He said that we don't have a talent drain problem, we actually have a salary problem. So that's another spin to the discussion on this. So I think most of us after that session, our face was spinning now. So it's many ways to look into it. Right.
Okay, Amnah, a quick one.
A quick one, yes.
Yeah.
Talent in general, yes, lacking. We have 9,000, 8,000 plus today. Unfortunately, it used to be 14,000, 14,000 halal companies. We have 3,000 plus a halal executive. We need halal executive for all the halal companies. But talking about, that is secara general, right? But for tech talent, yes, lacking completely. I mean, not completely, my apology. But my other thing is that we need good teachers, you know, quality project, I agree. And also, you know, there are people who are graduates, but then, honestly, I prefer diplomas. Yeah. Because they believe that they're just a diploma, and they want to learn more. I'm sorry to say that. So my best accountants today that in 14,000, 18,000 started with diploma, for example. My IT guys, they all start diploma. And now they're earning belas ribu. So anyway, there's something wrong ke? Ataupun how can we tweak our education? Because that needs to be addressed. And I'm not from that area not address that matter.
Yeah, I think this problem will be solved in 3 years' time or 2 years' time when we have far more advanced chat GPT that will solve all your problems. We don't need the talent anymore. So I think this problem is a perpetual problem, but I think technology will solve it. You know, this generative AI sort of stuff. So I think Secretariat kita dah cukup masa kan? So if there's no other question, yes, one more question there. 2 questions. Okay.
Yeah, I really wanted to catch you guys while we're in the topic of talent. Look, a while ago, I remember Mahadhir said he wanted Malaysians to come back and build Malaysia, right? Hence talent issue. There's actually no way to do that. I'm a former Malaysian. If I wasn't working on venture capital right now, I'd have no way to contribute to this place. I'm a software engineer. I've also been in blockchain. I'm literally what you guys are describing, and there is no way for me to say, hey, look, I was born in KL. Can I get my PR back? Okay, it's that simple. Okay, or other programs. Maybe you work your way there. Maybe you like contribute to MDEC for one year or something. But there is nothing. Ever since Mahadhir announced this, there's other things I could be talking about, but I'm aware that we're running short on time. So you guys that are in these positions of influence, kick this up the chain.
Yeah, I got another Mahadhir here to answer for you.
Sorry.
Your answer? Where's the question?
The question is basically, how can you contribute?
Returning talent.
A comment. Oh, okay, the issue. We'll take your issue and pass it. Yes, yes, I think it's a good question. Yes, at the back there. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, just a quick one. I just want to know something about this Smart Tourism 4.0. How far are we in the progress of Smart Tourism 4.0, digitalization of the tourism industry? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Try.
Thank you. I'll try to answer that. The Smart Tourism 4.0, I think, is very much MOTEC, a program and initiative under MOTEC itself, the Tourism and Culture Ministry. We are engaging them, primarily actually looking at the talent first. One, just to address the question on talent as well, we have this digital nomad initiative that was launched here last year during WCIT to bring talents from abroad to Malaysia. That's number one. So the Smart Tourism 4.0, I believe, would be something to revolutionize the tourism sector itself to go digital. They would be the best organization to answer that. However, we are working with them, looking at some of the adoption programs for the ministry first, and then introducing aspects such as, what do you call that, metaverse to some of the tourism offerings. It's not like the VR or AR tourism as before, but rather the tourism sector should be changed to adopt more property, whether it's in the virtual world, and also transition and translation of that into the real world. Right. So there are ways for us to actually address that. Again, this would be a program I believe is part of the smart tourism.
Yeah, okay, all right. Thank you very much. So I think I'd like to end this session. I think the rest of Penang missed this session. We should have a first session. Fadil, next time, this session should be number one session. You know, this is very interesting, not at the end of the day. Okay, so I'd like to thank all the panel members. Give them a round of applause and thank you all of you to be staying at this time, although we have dinner tonight. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We thank all of our distinguished speakers and moderator for their insightful views on the topic. So another round of applause to our distinguished panelists and moderator, Datuk, Dr. Hamzah Kassim. And we invite all panelists and moderator for a group photo, and Mr. Fadil, our CEO, Penang Halal International, together with our distinguished panelists. We hope that you have found the presentation informative, beneficial, and relevant. And token of appreciation from Penang Halal International to our panelists, professional technologist Kwang Ming, CEO of Digital Penang. Come on, let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you. Next to professional technologist Mahadhir Aziz, CEO of MDEC. And appreciation to Puan Amnah Shaari, Group CEO and Founder, Serunai Commerce Sendram Berhad. And to Yang Berbahagia Datuk Dr. Hamzah Kassim, Co-Founder, I Group and Chairman Leong Islamic Bank, our moderator. And we'd like to invite on stage the first session panelists, Mr. Marcelo Hidalgo Valdez, please, Director of Chile Halal and President of Chile Malaysia Chamber of Commerce, Industry and Services. And next, Mr. Mirza Vizagic, Vice President, Malaysia, Bosnia, Herzegovina. Unfortunately, he's not here with us. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our program, and once again, thank you for your participation, and thank you for spending time with us today, and we look forward for your participation in the coming PIHEC 2024. And with this, we'd like to invite all panelists kindly return to your seats, and with this, we'd like to wish all of you a very productive conference and networking, and have a most pleasant stay here in Penang to our international guests. And before we end our program, we would like to once again thank all participants, PIHEC 2023. Do keep Penang in your heart, and we cordially invite you for a refreshment at the foyer. Dipersilakan.